This video will show how you can upgrade your projects from First Person Exploration Kit version 1.2 to version 2.0. This project that we're going to use for this demonstration is basically a new Unity project with the version 1.2 imported into the project with some custom things made. Like there's some custom types here that are based on, or some custom prefabs that are based on some of the types like journals and inventory and pickups and so forth. And we'll look at how you need to upgrade some of those items to make sure that they work in the new version of the asset. A very important note is that you must be using version 5.5.4 P3 or newer of Unity. That's the minimum supported version for First Person Exploration Kit version 2, so ensure that your project is upgraded to at least that version, and then you're ready to go. So step one is to close Unity, close all instances of Visual Studio and Unity, make sure nothing is open that's touching the project, and back up your project. So go into your repo software, do a commit, put in some sort of baseline comment so you know that this is sort of the inflection point of this upgrade, or if you're not using source control, which I highly recommend you do, but if you're not, create a zip file or something of your project, put that in a safe place before you touch anything else. Now next you want to go into your old project into the assets folder, and before deleting the First Person Exploration Kit folder, you want to go into the scripts folder and grab the inventory manager script and just sort of plunk that on your desktop or wherever, and then go back out to assets and delete the First Person Exploration Kit folder entirely. Now the reason we kept the inventory manager script back is that there is an enum that will be updated by the upgrade that you'll need to perhaps recustomize depending on what types of inventory objects you had. So if we open up our old inventory manager script, there's this custom inventory type that we added to our enum for our project. This enum will get overwritten by the new one, and we'll need to add this inventory type back to our project after we upgrade. Now in order to prepare for copying the old folders over to your project, you'll need to make a new empty project. So don't open your old project because it'll blow up with a bunch of errors, which are recoverable, but it's easier if you don't do that. So click on a new project, call it whatever you want. Now what you need to do is go into the asset store and download the new version of First Person Exploration Kit. Now when you're importing from the asset store, as I show here, you're going to get this prompt that says importing complete project, and it'll kind of warn you that if you import this stuff, it might step on some other stuff in project settings. Since this is going to be a test project, it's not your main project, you want to click import because that's going to get things like the input mapping and stuff like that. So click on import before, and then it'll decompress. So I'm doing this locally, so I won't actually be doing it through the store interface in this video, but I will simulate that by importing the package here. So if I open this package and so regarding the Gizmos folder, in the video there might be some mention of the Gizmos folder as part of the import process in parallel with First Person Exploration Kit. Actually, only one folder can be included in the package inside of the assets folder. So the actual package you'll get from the store will look like this. You'll see this little white dot in the middle of our gizmo instead of our icon. So to fix that, just go into the First Person Exploration Kit folder, grab the Gizmos folder, and drag that out to the Assets folder, and that will fix it. Allow it to decompress. I'm going to import everything. So there's a new folder that's new from the old version that's called Gizmos. It has a bunch of little icons that help with Gizmo debugging, so you'll want to import that as well as the First Person Exploration Kit folder. Click on Import. So now that the import is complete, you can open up the First Person Exploration Kit folder. There's a few new folders here, which will be covered in the documentation and other videos, but open up the Scenes folder, open up Demo Scene, and press play. And if you walk around, this is the new demo scene. Just kind of give things a test to make sure that the basic interactions work as you expect them to, and that sort of thing. And then you can stop the scene. So the next step involves copying over all the new stuff from the upgraded version of the kit over to your old project. So you right-click on Assets, click on Show in Explorer, there are two sections you need to copy from. The first is project settings, and the next is assets. Now, a note about project settings: at the very least, you need the input manager asset. I recommend using all of them, but there might be things that you've done in your editor or graphics or quality settings, maybe tags you have in your project that you don't want to overwrite, and that's totally fine. So just be aware that all the inputs that are inside of this new input manager are required for the new version of the kit to work. But if you need to kind of copy and paste one or two of these rather than all of them, that's fine. Just be aware that there might be some issues with input manager that you'll need to work out. So in my case, I'm just going to take all of the stuff from project settings and put it into my project that I want to upgrade. So I'm going to delete everything because I don't care about my settings. I know I don't have any custom stuff with quality settings or audio manager or anything like that. So I paste in all the new stuff, which includes my new input manager asset. Next, in the old project that we're upgrading, open the assets folder again. So the one where we deleted the FPE kit or first person exploration kit folder, we're going to go back to our new project that has the new stuff in it and copy the first person exploration kit and gizmos folders and paste those into the assets folder of our old project that we're upgrading. Next, we're going to open Unity and open our old project that's to be upgraded, then look at some of the errors and little corner cases you might need to cover depending on how much customization you did with your project. So click on your project, you'll get a little hold on dialog. It'll do some stuff, index new files and that sort of thing. Once that's ready, then we'll take a look at the errors. Now that we're inside of our old upgraded project, you'll probably see some warnings and errors and things like that. Don't freak out, it's very easy to fix. The first thing I want to look at though is in the hierarchy we have probably a missing prefab, which will be the old UI camera. That's been deprecated, so you can just delete that from your scene and there's no consequence whatsoever. Unless you have your own custom code that references that. If so, you'll need to make some adjustments, but the UI camera is no longer needed, so that can be deleted completely. I press clear on the console just to get rid of any import warnings or anything like that. Those are generally not that important. If they come back, you need to address them, but if they didn't, it might have just been a meta file was out of date and got refreshed and a warning was given there. So the key thing we want to look at here is the errors. So these are compile errors to do with namespaces. The new version of the kit uses a namespace for all of the kit's code, which kind of keeps things nice and cordoned off so that they don't cross-contaminate. If you say re-import the standard assets or something like that, you're not going to have any interference between those different classes and things. So if you open up, in this case, we have a custom bit of code that extended the old activate type class, and it's complaining because it doesn't know what the FPE interactable activate script is. That's because we're not referencing or using the namespace. So open up Visual Studio, and we just have to fix that by saying using whilefun.fpe kit, hit save, go back to Unity, and those errors will be gone. Now, you may have to do this for each of the classes that you extended from the old types, but the fix is really easy and straightforward, so that shouldn't be too big of a problem. Next, we can get rid of the old interaction manager, player controller, and event system prefabs. Those are no longer required to be individually placed in your scene. They've been replaced by a single prefab, which is called FPE Core. So if you look for FPE Core in your project and place a single instance of that into your scene, press save, you should be good to go. Now we're going to run our scene and see what happens. So we got an error about an inventory type because we had a custom inventory type. Now there's a little bit of a migration that needs to happen here, and I'll show you how to upgrade any old inventory type objects you had by making them compatible with the new inventory system and menu and all that kind of stuff. So first, there's this error here that says that the object, my inventory, is missing a rigid body. That's because you'll see in the error down here, it says if you're upgrading from version 1.2, you may have forgot to add one as part of your migration. So if you see this error, it just means that you have an inventory prefab somewhere in your scene, and that prefab doesn't have a rigid body. The reason it needs a rigid body is that inventory you can now pick up and look at like you could a pickup type object, but then you can also store that in your inventory. So each of your inventory prefabs needs to have a rigid body. So if we click on our inventory here, and we just go to add component, rigid body, and we're going to apply that change to our prefab, and we'll run the scene again. So running the scene again, We're not getting any more errors. Everything seems to be working. And you can go ahead and test out any of your custom types. So we have a little switch here that turns the light on and off. There's an audio log there that I'm going to skip, and there's a journal. See, the UI is a little bit different than it was before. There's some pickup stuff, which is more or less the same. A couple of putbacks. This one doesn't have a putback location. And then that inventory that we just upgraded, I can pick it up and look at it, but then also if I press the put in inventory key, it goes in my inventory. So if I open up the inventory, I've got my item here. Also got a tab for audio diaries, notes, and some system stuff as well, but we'll get to that later. So one of the major changes, in addition to the inventory and UI, is also the addition of saving and loading of game files. So if we run our scene and we pick up our inventory here and we put it in inventory, and say we pick up this pickup over here and put it on the table next to the can of soup, and we go to the Systems tab and hit Save, we're going to write all that information out for this scene out to a save file. So all that information will be captured, and when we load this, all those objects will be back where they were and states will be restored and things like that. Now, one of the other migration tasks you need to complete is the placement of prefabs for pickups and inventory and the audio clip files for audio diaries into a resources subfolder. So we'll go through how you do that. And the reason we do that is that when you save the game and load the game, when loading, the game needs to know where to get those prefabs from. And if you're loading them at runtime in a build, they need to be in a resources folder. So if we try to load our game, we'll get an error message, and I'll show you how to get rid of that error message. So if I click load, it'll basically complain that it doesn't know how to load certain objects. So you'll see in the console here, we got a few errors. So there's some pickup stuff that it doesn't know how to deal with. So we'll go through how to deal with that and how to make those errors go away. So the first step, if you don't already have a resources folder, it's a good idea to create one. So resources can exist in more than one location. So we have a resources folder inside of the first person exploration kit parent folder, which is fine, but we're going to make our own that will live separately, and we can not worry about overwriting it with future upgrades and stuff like that. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it resources. And then inside of that, I need to create two subfolders. The first one is called pickups, and the second one is called inventory items. So what I'm going to do, grab my pickups from my old prefabs folder and put them inside of the resources pickups folder. And now my pickups exist in a place where the loading mechanism for the save load manager can know where to find them and instantiate them. So now if we run the game again and hit load game, our pickup should end up back on the table next to the can of soup. So there it is. So if you open up the menu and look at your inventory, you'll see something kind of weird. And that is that it says you have a battery, but you didn't pick up a battery, you picked up this custom type that you made. And the reason that happens is that the old index for the enum for the inventory item type has some new stuff in it. So you need to put your old custom stuff back into that enum and then add a little lookup value so that the save load manager knows basically how to cross-reference your prefab with the item type and then load that in correctly. So if we open up the object lookup script and also open the inventory manager script, we'll need to add that custom type that we set aside at the beginning. We'll have to add that back and then put a small lookup value into the object lookup so that Unity knows where to find and where to fetch those objects from. So in our case, we only had one custom type called myCustomInvA. So we're just going to copy that value and then add a new value to our table here and hit save. And then we need to add a lookup. Before we had when we loaded the game, we got a battery instead of our own custom type. That's because the index we previously had aligned to the same enum value as the battery that's new to this this asset. So we need to add a new type. So we'll add that here. So look up our new enum value myCustomInvA, and then we also need to grab the prefab that corresponds to that. So inside of our inventory items folder, it's empty right now, but we have to go into our prefabs folder, grab our inventory type, and then put that in the inventory item type folder, and then also just copy the name of the object there and put that in quotes. So our new lookup table says everything that corresponds to our inventory type of my custom inv-A maps to a prefab called my inventory, and it will know where to look and find that. So save that and then go back to Unity and we'll see how it works. There is one last thing you need to do before you run the game and test the load game again. That is to select your prefab and open the inventory item script and scroll down to the inventory item type and switch it from battery, which was the old equivalent mapping in the enum, to the new one that we just added. So go ahead and click My Custom inv-A, that's the new one that we want this prefab to be associated with, and select that. Now the old save game data that we have is not going to work because it saved the battery type out to the file. So as far as the save game data is concerned, we saved that we had a battery in our inventory because it was incorrectly mapped. So what we need to do is follow these debug instructions here in the console. There's some debug keys that help us do quick saves, quick loads, and refresh our game data or erase it. So if you run the scene and press the number 4 on your keyboard, you'll see a little printed message that says debug start a new game. So what that did was just flush all the old data out. So we'll roughly approximate the save game we had before by throwing that pickup on the table, grabbing this inventory, and then checking that we have it, which we do. So that's our new inventory type. And go to System, Save Game, and then we'll restart our scene again. Go to System, Load Game. Now our pickup is on the table again. Checking our inventory items, we have our new type instead of the battery, so our mapping has been verified to be correct. Now there is some new flavor text and images and things that are associated with inventory as part of this upgrade. There's going to be a separate video and part of the documentation to show you how to customize those things in the inspector. But really quick, there's the item name here. There's an image, which needs to be a 2D sprite, and then a description, and then some other options for actions you can take. So if we click on our item here, everything else is grayed out. So we can't hold it, we can't drop it, we can't consume it. Those are some of the options. So if you look at that other part of the documentation and video about how to add new inventory items, there's some detail there in terms of how you can customize this to kind of look and feel the way you want it to and allow the player to do the actions that they need to do with that new item type. So that's it for upgrading your projects. All of our types here work, and all of the functionality that used to exist in the old version of the demo scene, if we were to open the new demo scene, all that stuff has been upgraded to work with the new inventory system and menu system, and also is savable, loadable. So if we say open this old cabinet that we used to have in the old version, it's been upgraded. So in the new version, if I save my game and then start the game again and load my game, I'm looking at the cabinet how it was before, and the cabinet has remembered that it was open when I saved the game. So everything that used to work still works, and now it even works better. And then there's a new demo scene that has a bunch of new interaction types and things like that that you can play with. Now, if you want to upgrade some of your old legacy stuff from your project, like say this activate type here that we can turn the switch on and off, you can upgrade these to be savable very easily. I will show you quickly how to do that for a basic activate type, and that will have the result of the switches being saved between saving and loading. So if I turn the switch on and save my game, then load my game, the switch will be on when I load the game. So if I go to my custom activate thing script, I used to extend the activate type, and there's a couple of changes we need to do to make this a toggleable switch that we can then save and restore the state for. So the first thing we want to do is change the class that is extended to the generic savable game object class, and that will cause a couple of errors, but if you go to put your mouse over top of your class name with the red underline, it'll complain that it doesn't implement abstract member function. So if you click on the light bulb that appears in Visual Studio, click on implement abstract class, it will add two functions. One is get save game data, which you need to return a little data package back to the save game manager. And then the other one is restore save game data, and that will pass that information back to you that you can then determine what to do with that information and how to restore your state appropriately. The other thing we need to change is these function calls here to playing some audio and also switching our light on and off. So we're going to actually break this function out into two functions and get rid of the old activate function. So we'll make a public void turn switch on, and that's going to turn the light on and play a sound. And then we're going to just copy and paste this to turn switch off. And then we're going to disable the light, and we'll get rid of this activate function completely. And we're also going to get rid of the override on awake because we no longer need to override those because we're not driving this class from the activate type. So save those changes and go back to Unity. And we have a little bit of configuration to do in the inspector. So if we add an activate type, generic activate type script to this, the vanilla one that comes with the kit, and we add two things. There's a toggle on and toggle off function, and those will reference the switch code that we just implemented. So we still have our custom activate thing up here. We've added a generic activate down there, and we will add, click the little plus on the toggle on event and the toggle off event, and we'll switch our event fire type to toggle. Now we will just drag the my activate prefab into those two slots, and then go to my custom activate thing, turn on the switch for toggle on, turn off the switch for toggle off, and we'll apply those changes to the prefab and save our scene. So if we play the scene, our switch still works as we expect it to. Now we have a little bit of work left to do to make that something that can be saved and loaded as part of the Save Load Manager. Heading back over to Visual Studio, there's a couple small changes we need to make. The first is that we want to save our state in a variable. So you could use the lights enabled or disabled state for that variable, but I recommend using a separate one. So we'll just make a new variable called myOnState. And when we turn the switch on, we're going to make that true. And when we turn the switch off, we'll make that false. And then in order to capture that state and send it out to the save game system, we're going to return a new save data object. And we have to give our name, so the name of this game object that this script is attached to. We're not going to use the float or the int, so I'm just putting zeros in there, and then we're going to pass in my on state. So that will basically tell the save game system, here's my data package, has my name and this flag that I want to keep track of, and then when the game is loaded, this restore function is called and we get that data back, so then we have to make some decisions on how we interpret that data and act upon it. So we are going to assign my on state to be data.savedbool. So these saved values here correspond to the saved values inside of the package we gave. So if we gave a name 00 and our state, then our saved name would be our name. Our saved int and float we ignored, so those will be 0 because we passed in 0. But the saved bool will be the value we gave for my on state when we saved. So I'm going to grab that, and then I'm just going to do a check here to say if my on state is on, then I want my light to be on. If it isn't, then I want my light to be off. So this is a pretty simple example, but basically that will restore our light state to be on or off depending on if it was on or off when we saved the game. So heading back over to Unity, if we save our scene, if we run the scene, our switch is off right now. So if we turn it on and then save the game, and then turn it off when we load our game, our light's on again. So that is it for the migration video showing how to go from a legacy version 1.2 project to a 2.0 project. There may be some things that were changed in the source code that impact your project depending on the level of source code modification you did from the original. This video covers most of the basics and how to upgrade most things, assuming you didn't do a lot of deep changes technically. If you did, though, there were some changes that are noted in the documentation, so please have a look at those, have a look at the new docs for the new features. There's some video content there as well on the new features and how to get those to work. If you take a look at all the documentation and the videos and things and you're still stuck, maybe you had some deep level source code change that you don't know how to undo to make compatible with the new system, if you really need this to work on your existing project, just let me know through, you can email me at the support email that's linked in the documentation and on the asset store, or you can message me on Twitter, whatever works. Just let me know what's going on and we can take a look at the problem together and try to solve it.